From the previous chapter, we talked about, or we stopped at the keys, the primary keys, or the three types of keys, the primary, the foreign, and the composite, and also the relationships between the tables. This is the very important part of that chapter, because once you build tables, you have like 2, 3, 4, multiple tables. Then you want to assign primary keys to each table. Then you want to link these tables together, as we saw before. You won't be able to pull data from different tables using query or report unless these tables are actually connected. And the connection is going to be one of these kind of like relationships. This is why we call it relational database. So you have to build this in advance before even populating your tables, before even data exists in the tables. So we're going to finish up with an example of creating a table, assigning a primary key, and using relationships among the tables. Last time we ended up, so if you want to see the relationships, or you want to see the, let's start with the primary keys. So for example, we created we created the corporate table, if you can remember, and we added one record there. But if you go to the design view, you see that corporate ID, which is auto number, Access will generate that number. This is our primary key. So simply you select the field and you click on primary key, and this is your primary key. The primary key cannot be null, so you cannot leave it empty. It cannot exist twice in the same table. And it has to be unique for each record. We talked about using the phone numbers, the social security numbers. These are kind of like, sometimes it's unique, sometimes it's not. So most of the time, this is a general practice that the programmer or the database administrator will create a specific name, ID for each record. For example, you students, we have student ID. That is given by the university. That's your primary key in their database. Usually when you go anywhere in the school, they will ask you what is your ID number, okay? By this number, they will be able to identify you in specific. That number doesn't belong to multiple persons. It's only one, okay? That's why the reason we're using primary keys and databases. Foreign keys are primary keys from one table or another, but it's a regular column or field in another table. You're going to use that to link between these two tables. So as we saw, for example, here in the order, we can see that participant ID is there. So someone make an order for you and you go, okay, this is the ID number 2, okay? So if you go to this table, you'll be able to identify who's that person. No, not the person, the participants. So it was this person, but you're not going to put all the information in that table. This is called normalization. So you don't want to duplicate all the data from each table. You want each table to have its unique data. The only duplicate information in this database is the participant ID. Think about if you want to make an order and you don't have a participant table, okay? Next time, you're going to make order number 1, and you're going to put all the information of your participant here, okay? First name, the last name, the address, and everything. And he came back again, or she, and made another participation. What are you going to do? You're going to create another ID number having the same information, the first name, the last name, the address, the phone number. So these will create duplicates information within one table. Here you minimize the duplication by just using the participant ID. So for example, this user, if you have a duplicates here, 2, 3, do we see any duplicates there? 5, 9, no, 8, 28, 25. If, for example, this participant came back and made another order, everything here is going to be different. So the order ID, the amount, the method, but the participant ID, only the participant ID is going to be duplicates. That will minimize it because all the information of the participants are in this table, okay? So this is an example of a foreign key. We used the participant ID here and from this one. We're going to create one and see how that's going to work. But if you want to go to the database tools, you're going to find something called relationships. I'm going to go and close these tables. In relationships, if you click show tables, you can show all the tables there, for example. I'm going to show this table. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Okay, that's all the tables there. You see, this table has no relationships. What's that one? That's a duplicate. No. So we don't want that table. It's already there. So you can see that we also created the corporate. If you remember, we created that one, but we haven't made a connection yet between this one and other table. So for here, I will be able to pull all informations from the participants. But if you want to join this to someone else, for example, participants here, yeah. So we created this from the previous class. Were you here Wednesday? We didn't have access. Oh, we didn't have access. Okay. So it's chapter 2. Yes. Okay. So we created this table. If you go and if you can create a very quick table, so we call it corporate ID. This is our primary key there. Company name, address, it's kind of like similar to the participants. So it's all short text there. So create table, you go on create table and use the table design. We're going to create another example. Just watch this now. We're going to create another table together, okay? Combining it. But you also need this table, actually. It's unfortunate. You need this table. Anyone also following here with the table? Because if you go back to the relationships, when you make connections, for example, we made a connection here between the participants and the orders. These are called the relational connections, the relation between databases. We have 3 relations, one-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-many. What do we mean by that? For example, here it says like 1 to many. This is an infinite. So there's a relationship, or you could ask yourself a question. If I have a participant here, how many orders this participant can make? Is it 1 or more than 1? This is only 2 options for you. Is it only 1 order or more? So it's usually more, right? This is what make you this, the connection between this and this here is an infinite. So the participant can make many orders, all right? Then you ask yourself another question, moving from this table to that table. If you have an order, how many participants or how many customers can be in that order? Is it 1 or more than 1? Usually an order made by 1 person, okay? That's why when you go, for example, in Amazon, you have your own account that belongs to only you, and you go and make an order, that orders belong only to you, right? So every order in this table only have 1 participant. You have multiple orders, but each order will have only 1 participant. And that's how to define 1 to many, okay? If you get this example now, we have participants, and those participants represent corporates, okay? This is the golf setting. So for example, corporates, they have they're making this charitable event or something. So each company will bring representatives for them to go. For example, they might be representative, they might be golfers, they might be people who are just helping with the events. So the connections between the corporates and the participants goes this way. The corporate, 1 corporate in this table, how many participants they can have? Is it only 1 participant or more than 1? This is 1 connection. So one corporate can have multiple participants. So this end, if we make a connection between these two tables, this is going to be a many this side, right? So the corporate has many participants. They could be golfers, they could be volunteers, they could be representatives, just go and watch the event, okay? On the other hand, if we have one participant, how many companies they could represent? Is it only one or more than one company? In this example, actually, the book used that one participant can represent multiple companies because it's a charitable event. It's not bad. So one participant can represent multiple companies. So the connections between these two tables called many to many. One participant can belong to multiple corporates, and one corporate can have multiple participants. So here we want to create many to many relationships. Access doesn't support that directly. So you cannot go and say, okay, I want many connections from here and many connections from there. Access only support one to many or one to one, okay? So when we created one to many here, if you go on, for example, if we deleted this one, if we deleted that connection, to generate one to many, you need a primary ID in this table, and you need the same primary ID here as a foreign ID, or a foreign key, sorry, okay? What you're gonna do is just gonna drag between this one and that one, and you're gonna open an edit relationship, and it will ask you the connections goes from this ID to that ID, from this table to that table, and you wanna click enforce referential integrity. Referential integrity means you cannot add data here does not exist in this table. So you cannot say this order belongs to someone and that someone is not in the participant table. They must have an ID. So for example, if someone is like, are you a participant with us? Yes. If his information or her information is not in this table, you have to go and input his information, her information first, then you can make the order, okay? So this one will enforce that. Cascade update and cascade delete. If you delete any customer from here, it will go and delete every orders that he or she has, okay? If you update any information here, it will go and update it in that table too. If you don't select these two, that will not happen, okay? But the same thing, if you enforce the referential integrity, if you go here and try to delete an order, it will ask you, you cannot delete the order because you have a participant in your table, okay? So for now, if you click create, you see that it's say by default it's one to many, that's the default. And you click create, and it will show that this is a one to many connections, okay? One to one, on the other hand, is not a common practice. So mostly if you see one to one, you have to question why. Because if it's one to one, usually you can put it in just one table, okay? There's very rare situations where you're gonna use one to one. We're not gonna cover that in this chapter. But we're gonna cover the many to many, okay? Access doesn't support that directly, so you cannot just go and create that connection. You have to create a table in between. You have to create a table here that connects those two tables together. And a good example for that, we see it is here. This one. There's a connection between the order and the items. An order can have multiple items in it. You can go in one order, you have the multiple items in that order. You can order many things in one order, or many items in one order. Items also can belong to multiple orders. So if you go to Apple website and you order, for example, an Apple Watch and an iPhone, that's two items that's in one order. But the Apple phone, for example, can exist in multiple orders by multiple people, okay? So that's the connection. It's called many to many between these two tables. But you cannot do that directly. You have to create, we call it a middle table, or they have a name here for it, a junction table, okay? You create a junction table that says one item here can belong to many orders, and an order here can belong to many items. You can have multiple items, okay? So we're gonna create something similar to this table here that connects between the participants and the corporate ID, and we're going to call that participant role, okay? So the participant role will define if this participant is a golfer, is just a representative of the company, and we're going to use both the primary IDs from these two tables to link that table. So we're going to use, as here, we're going to use one-to-many and one-to-many between these tables, and the result's going to be many-to-many between these two tables, okay? So how you do that, you're going to go and create a table. You're going to create it by design. And that table has participant role ID. This is going to be our primary key. And here we're going to use the auto number. This is going to be our primary ID there. Participant ID, yes. I'm going to put a description. This is a primary key. I'm also going to create corporate ID. This is going to be the foreign key from the corporate table. Okay, we're going to see how we're going to see that. This is going to be a number. We're going to keep all the same information there. We're also going to create a participant ID. This is going to be another foreign key from the participant table, all right? And this is also going to be a number. And finally, we're going to add the role, which is the role of that participant in this table. And this is going to be a short text. I'm going to utilize that and put 50 there. This is a table. I'm going to go and assign this as a primary key for this table. I'm going to select that field and click primary key. And this will make it a primary key. Now, if you click save, it'll ask you to save that. I want to call that table, what's it called here? Participant role. So TPL participant role. I click OK. I'm going to close it. So I created a new table here, which is now empty, but I want to add the connection here in the relationships. I want to add it here and make the connections between these two tables. What I'm going to do is, if you go to design, show table, now we have a new table there I want to add. So I'm going to add to the relationship, click close. This table doesn't belong to any table, there has no connections, but it has to be between these two tables, yeah. To add the table. So you go to show table. So under design, you go to show table, and you'll see that table there. Oh, you're not in the relationship yet? Go to database tools and click relationship. Once you're there, you can show the tables, and you can add whatever table that's not in this relationship window. Now, this is our primary key here, but you can see that we have a corporate ID, which is a primary key here, and there's a foreign key there. And we have a participant ID, which is a primary key here, and it's a foreign key there. Now, what we're going to do is that I'm going to connect those two together. So the participant ID with the participant ID there, and I want to enforce the referential integrity. So it's a one-to-many relationship, and I click create. So this is one-to-many. And I'm going to drag also from the corporate ID to the corporate ID there. That's the same thing. I'm going to enforce the referential integrity, and I click create. Now we have one-to-many relationship between the corporate and the participant role. And we have one-to-many relationship between the participant and the participant role. But the result connection between the corporates and the participant is many-to-many, both ends, okay? The lines, you just drag. So you go and click on this field, click the mouse, and drag it to this side. They will give you the edit relationship. You have to click enforce inferential integrity. Mm-hmm. Now we're going to go and populate the table. So now we have a table. We want to add data to it. So you can go directly there and add data. So for example, the participant here, they use an example. This one is going to be filled by access because it's an auto number. But now I have to add a corporate ID that's already exists in the corporate ID table. I cannot just add a random one. So I'm going to use one, for example, because only I have one. If you go to the corporate here, we only have one corporate. I'm going to add one there. So this value is going to be 1. For the participant, I add the participant number 1. And the role, he is going to be a golfer. Now I enter data in this table that's actually combined ID from corporates and the participants. I can add another one. The same corporate is going to be 1. The participant ID is going to be 26. And he's going to be a representative. Okay, so now I'm making more data into this table, or creating or populating the table with data. What happens if I added a corporate that's not exist? Did I force the share? It will tell you that you cannot add a data because there's no corporate ID number 2 there. Okay, if you go to the corporates, you only have 1. So you cannot add a corporate in that table as doesn't exist in that table, in this table. Okay, this will conclude the chapter 2. I'm gonna